Sara Jade Woodhouse is a transgender woman active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She has been a professor of film at Salt Lake Community College for the past 13 years and acts professionally in theater, film, and television. Sara Jade is an accomplished writer and currently working on an autobiography. She has volunteered with Mormons Building Bridges and is a member of Affirmation's Board of Directors. She seeks to promote better understanding of transgender people everywhere. Please welcome Sara Jade Woodhouse.
Wow. When Randall Thacker asked me to speak at this conference about a year ago or so, I had no idea that I would be sharing the stage with such wonderful people and such awesome examples. They always say that it's great to start off your speech with a joke. Of course, as I looked through my collection of jokes, most of them are a little blue for this audience. So I wasn't going to tell a joke. I had a really good joke, but I figured that this audience is probably not the place for a VD joke. So, and I thank Kimberly for that little advice there to sell that as my joke. So there we go. It wasn't that long ago, probably 2 years ago, that I found myself at my very first Affirmation conference. When I transitioned, I did so, this was around 2004, 2005, and I did so without any knowledge at all that these types of organizations existed. I did it without any idea that there were other trans people who were Mormon out there like me at all. My friends were in the drag community, and I loved every one of them, but they were not active. They were not Mormons. So I did my transition into the Mormon church as a trans woman kind of alone. But my experience was such that I couldn't have asked for more support from my priesthood leaders, from my fellow ward members. I remember the first ward that I moved into. I approached the bishop and told him my situation, and he said, well, I personally don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to come to church and enjoy all of the church activities. Let me talk to the stake president and see what he has to say. And he went to the stake president, and the stake president left it up to him, so he came back and he said, I'll tell you this, as long as I'm bishop here, you will have a safe place to come and worship. That was phenomenal to me. So I transitioned in that ward. I stayed in that ward. It was roughly about a year later that I was in that ward, and I was getting ready to leave after sacrament meeting to go down and visit my parents, who live way far south. They live in a little small town called Salem, Utah. Don't know if any of you know that. That's actually closer here than it is where I was living at the time. But I went to leave, and before I did, I felt this person came up behind me and put their arms around me and embraced me. Shocked me at first. And I turned around, and there was the Relief Society president. And she looked me in the eyes, and she said, I just want to tell you that you look more beautiful now than I've ever seen you look before. That touched me deeply. Thank you. And my experience pretty much everywhere was that way. I remember from ward to ward to ward, I had a wonderful experience. I remember even I had moved home at some point to take care of my mother, and I moved over to Provo, and I was living in Provo and going to a Provo ward at the time. And I was having conversations with the bishop, and there was some stuff in my life that I needed to take care of. And through talking to the bishop, we decided on a disfellowshipment. And I remember him saying to me, specifically, he said, this has nothing to do with you being transgender. We just want to take care of these past mistakes that you have told me about. And that was awesome. And then during that time, I was going through a bit of a rough patch, and I was talking to my bishop, same bishop in Provo, and I'd gone off hormones for a little while. I was questioning, And then I went back on hormones, and I remember telling him, saying, you know, before I started taking hormones, my levels were all over the place. I was moody, I was up and down, depressed, not depressed. And when I started taking hormones, I leveled out. And I said, when I quit hormones this past time, instantly my levels were all over the place again. I was depressed, I was angry, I was suicidal, and went back on hormones, and now I'm feeling good. And he says, you know, just that alone tells me that this is who you are meant to be. That's from my Provo bishop. How awesome was that, right? So then I moved back up to Salt Lake, and I kind of forgot about the disfellowshipment, and a couple of years went by, actually, and then I thought, you know, it's time, I want to be refellowshipped. And at that time, I was living in Midvale, and my bishop, I told him, I said, I want to be refellowshipped. And he said, oh yeah, let's do it, because I want to call you to a calling. I think that would be awesome. So I explained to him what was happening, and he said, let me talk to the stake president, and we'll see. And the next thing I know, the bishop said, okay, we need to have a meeting with the stake president. And I was like, okay. I figured that was par for the course. And in this meeting, I remember the stake president saying to me, so as long as you are living a transgender lifestyle, he didn't use the term transgender, we can't refellowship you into the church. I had had such good experiences up until that point, and that devastated me. I was like, why am I going to church now? I can't take the sacrament, I can't speak in church, I can't pray in church, I'm basically a body in the audience. And luckily, you know, by that time I had had years of positive experiences in the church. I had established relationships with Mormons Building Bridges and Affirmation, and I had a huge number of people on Facebook that were my friends, and when I put this blog post up on my blog, they just reached out to me, and with the amount of love that came my way, yay Facebook, was incredible. And through that, I found another ward, which I started attending. And this ward is amazing. I went, and the bishop embraced me wholeheartedly. He said, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be in full fellowship in this church. He said, and I didn't even ask this. Up until this point, you have to understand that I had not been going to Relief Society because I had been told that by various bishops that probably was something that we couldn't do. And I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. And then this bishop, out of the blue, I hadn't even asked for it, he says, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to go to Relief Society. Let me talk to the Relief Society president and see, but I don't see any reason why that shouldn't happen. And I received a text from him like 2 days later on the phone. He says, good news, you'll be able to go to Relief Society. And I was like, wow, I'm going to Relief Society now. It was awesome. And I showed up on that Sunday, and the sisters were like, who are you? Are you new in the ward? It's so awesome to have you here, and we're so excited to have you. And the Relief Society president was there, and she's now my visiting teacher. Awesome, right? So I went from that one horrible experience in the church to once again being embraced by my religious family. And I think that my point with this is that oftentimes we get caught up in this idea that the church is out to get us. And granted, there's been some comments that haven't been all that friendly at times. But I know for a fact that there are people out there, and large numbers of them, who want to embrace us as children of God, who want us in their wards, who want us in their religious families. And that's a great thing. It's important, I think, and I know it's hard, it's really hard at times, for us to be visible. A lot of times we'd like to just fly under the radar, and many of us, some of us, that's the only choice we have, and that's great. But for those of us who can, I think it's so important for us to be visible, for us to show the other members of the church and society in general that we're no different than any of them, that we have the same loves, we have the same hates, we have the same vices. We can rock a purple dress like anyone else can. Just kidding. But sorry, that was very self-effacing. Anyways. But I think it's important for us to be visible, if we can be, which is why I will actually be running for office in 2018. I think it's very important for us to not just be visible, but to be active in things, to take action. I remember when I first transitioned, I had a bunch of friends, and they said to me, you know, you're going to be such a great activist once you have your surgery and you get all this stuff done, and you'll be so awesome. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be an activist. I'm not a parade marcher. I'm not a flag waver. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just going to live my life, be me, in private. That'd be awesome. And I was doing that. At school, I was just kind of being me. I wasn't making it a big deal. I teach at Salt Lake Community College, just in case you were wondering what that was all about. But I remember one day I was sitting at Salt Lake Community College waiting for my class to start, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine. And she called to let me know that 2 of my really dear friends had just been attacked in their home for being who they are. 2 of my very dear gay friends had had a neighbor child wander over to their house looking for their mother. And shortly after that, a bunch of men burst into their home, breaking the doors off the hinges. The child had already gone home. They burst into the home and they beat these men near to death. They grabbed TVs off the wall. They broke them over their heads. They beat DJ so badly that his eye socket was broken, and they pulled Dan out into the street and curb stomped him. And I remember hearing this, and it was that moment in my life that I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be quiet. I can't just sit here while friends of mine are being beaten or dying out there. And it was that moment that I started becoming an activist. It was gradual. I started with a rally. I went from there to working in Equality, Utah for a while. And it's important because we are still out there being hurt and dying, especially in the trans community. It's important for us to be visible. So I'd just like to end with my testimony. I know that this church is true. I know that God lives. I know that Jesus is the Christ. I know that they love me as I am. I know that I am right with God. I know that the church will receive these revelations in time. I feel it coming. And I want to be here when it does. I thank you very much. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.